Hello, so today we're going to be talking about how to beat spammers in ninjaio. First off, to get this out of the way in the start, I don't have anything against people who spam. Nothing at all, okay? I think you should be able to play the game however you find the most fun, whether that's camping, spamming, whatever. Just do whatever you find most fun. So, even though this video is going to be about beating players who use rapid fire weapons, I don't have anything against them, and you shouldn't either. You know, we're all just playing a game, so we shouldn't hate each other. Anyways, though, in this video, I'm going to go over the best ways to fight against and win against people who are using rapid fire weapons or air quote spam weapons. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to just define a spammer as someone who uses rapid fire weapons like the shotgun, pulse gun, minigun, you know, all that stuff like that. I think you guys know what I'm talking about when I say spam. I'm just going to use the word spam and spammer because it's way too much work for me to say rapid fire weapon user every single time. So with that out of the way, let's start the actual tutorial video. There is one main thing you need to know when fighting spammers if you want to be able to win against them, and that's understanding their weapon limitations and line of sight. It's really important. And I know that sounds like a little bit complicated, but it's actually really simple. Let me break it down. So when a player is using a weapon, they can only shoot in certain directions. Otherwise, you know, they'll hit a floor or a wall or something. You're limited by your surroundings, if that makes sense. So their bullets can only go like a set number of places at any given time. There are places that you can't really hit unless you reposition yourself. For example, if you're on like the floor above another player in that like big open bouncing map. I don't remember the name, but you know which map I'm talking about. You can't just like shoot through the floor with a minigun. You actually need to move before you can hit them. So let's call that concept line of sight. Now, the line of sight of a spammer is different depending on the weapon they're using. For example, if a player is using a pulse gun, they have a larger and different line of sight than a player who's using a shotgun. Now, generally speaking, spam weapons shoot really fast, but don't do as much damage as normal weapons. So, since they shoot so many bullets, it's really easy for them to do things like deflect throwables or RPGs, kill players with low health, and it's also a lot easier for them to hit a Barrett user at least once, which is a really big problem because after taking damage, the Barrett is a lot less accurate. Basically, unless you have some kind of advantage, entering a spammer's line of sight is really dangerous, especially if you're using something like a Barrett or an RPG. Now, the way to solve this issue is by understanding their line of sight, and you need to understand the line of sight of each different weapon and adapt your strategy according to which weapon you're facing, which it sounds like a lot, but really it's not too difficult to do. So you need to, after you have that understanding of each weapon, you need to be able to take advantage of that understanding. So let me sort of like break that idea down. Once you understand where a spammer can possibly shoot, given, you know, wherever their position in the map is, if you know all the possible spots they can shoot, you can just avoid entering those areas and stay out of their line of sight until you have an advantage. The way to get an advantage is by positioning yourself in a spot where your shot will reach them before any of their shots have a chance to reach you. So to give an example of that, if you were using a Barrett against a shotgun user, getting this advantage would mean that you need to back up and snipe them from a long range where the bullets can't reach you because their line of sight doesn't extend that far. If you're using a Barrett and facing someone with a long-range spam weapon, like a minigun, pulse gun, and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're only entering their line of sight when you are confident you can hit your first shot. Then you need to use your flight to move quickly and get into position as fast as possible. Lots of times when you're facing these longer range kind of spam weapons, like the pulse gun, minigun, those kinds of stuff, you will end up entering their line of sight to take your shot. So what that means is you need to get in there quickly and get your shot off quickly. And how you do this is by making sort of like a premeditated little plan in your head. It's not something you think about too much, but you just need to have like a little bit of a plan when you enter their line of sight. So stay out of their line of sight and then go in with a plan. If you go in without a plan, any player of equal skill who's using a spam weapon against you will overwhelm you with their bullets. So ideally, you want to be very efficient. Get into their line of sight and just take them out right away and get out of their line of sight. You don't want to be staying in there for a long time if you can help it. The less time they have to shoot at you, the better. So this means you stay completely out of their line of sight, behind a wall, under something, over something, wherever you have to go. Stay out of their line of sight until you see an opportunity to attack quickly and accurately. Now, this is the same kind of strategy you want to use when you're playing against someone using like a rifle or the AK-47 as well. Any sort of like long to medium range spam weapon, you're going to want to be employing this kind of strategy. Like, you need to sort of understand where their weapon limitations are, what their line of sight is, and then play around that. Now, obviously, this is easier said than done because in an actual match, the player will move. So you need to sort of be able to track their line of sight as they're moving. But with enough practice, this happens really naturally. Now, when you enter their line of sight, you need to know exactly where you are going to go, where you're going to take your shot, and be confident that you can hit it. Basically, the key concept you need to understand is that you do not enter a spammer's line of sight without some kind of plan. If you just run into their line of sight without making any sort of brief plan on how you're going to deal with them, how you're going to avoid their bullets, it's really, really easy to just get overwhelmed. Usually, a good time to rush into a spammer's line of sight is when they're out of ammo, when they're fighting someone else. I know people are going to be like, third party, but this is ninjaio. Who cares about that? This isn't Fortnite, okay? When they're fighting somebody else, it's a good opportunity for you to attack. Or when you can get into a position and you know you'll be able to shoot them really fast and accurately from that spot. Like, for example, I have a lot of practice shooting from sandbags. So if I see somebody, like, say, spamming a minigun or a pulse gun down, like, below a sandbag position, I'm going to rush into the sandbag position and take the shot. You know, it depends on the context, on what you're comfortable with, but have some kind of plan and be confident that you can hit your shot. Because if you're not confident you're going to be able to hit your shot, you're going to want to wait for another opportunity. Now, whenever you're dealing with these sort of like planning strategies in like fast-paced games, like you might have to think about them at first, which might be tough, but with enough practice, this kind of like brief planning strategy happens really naturally, like really, really naturally. You won't have to think about it. Now, once you've had enough practice taking out spammers through, you know, using line of sight tactics and like knowing when to attack, where their weapons can shoot, it honestly just becomes something you can do instinctively. Like, you can execute entire plans without even thinking for 1 second. It's like subconscious, you know. It's actually really cool. So yeah, that's I guess the key takeaway from this video is understand the line of sight of the weapon that a spammer is using. So you need to understand the different weapon types and the line of sights that they use. So you need to understand the bow arcs and where it arcs. You need to understand the pulse gun can bounce off things, and you need to understand, okay, if I'm standing here, can any shots be bounced to me? And like, you need to know their weapon capabilities before you can play around their capabilities, if that makes sense. Okay, everyone, so that's everything I wanted to talk about today. This video was requested by a lot of people, so hopefully if you're one of those people who were requesting this video, I hope some of your questions were answered here, or at least it hopefully helped a little bit. If you have any other questions or want me to clarify on anything I said, or if I was unclear on anything, just leave a comment below and I'll make sure to read and respond to those. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.